everyone, welcome back to Country How Designs. I'm Jo, and this is just a really quick video where we're going to discuss kind of some money saving tips that we've picked up around bag making. So sometimes bag making can be a kind of pricey endeavour and a pricey hobby. And with the recent rise in the cost of living, me and Adam thought it would be a good idea to do like a quick video on tips that we've picked up from across the internet and Facebook and things like that, but also ideas that we've come up with ourselves. So the first one is probably one that a lot of you have seen on our Instagram and Facebook, and that is regarding expensive rivets, such as rainbow rivets. So this is a tip that we picked up from a Facebook group. So if you're using rainbow hardware, it can be really expensive. So when you're using rivets in a place like this, where the back is not going to be seen, it's hidden, just use the rainbow rivet for the front. So use the post for one side and the cap for the other. And then on the back, you can use a cheap rivet, any other colour that's much cheaper than rainbow. It's not going to work where the rivets are on show on both sides, but for things like this, it's just perfect. And it's going to mean that you use a lot less rainbow rivets. So another big cost in bag making is fabrics. So the first thing I would strongly recommend is know your stash. Now, a lot of us are guilty of having more fabric than we could probably use in a lifetime. So make sure that you know exactly what's in your stash. Even organize it by color or by theme so that you can, like when you're looking out, ideas for a bag combination, you can actually see what you've got and see what would work quite easily with, what you're working with. That way you will use your stash, and try not to buy fabric that you're ultimately not going to use. So for me, it's a great idea to have a plan in mind. So I'll only buy a fabric if I know which bag I'm going to make with it. So just a little bit of planning can make a really big difference and save a lot of money. You can also repurpose things. So a lot of you might have seen Adam's Datham sling that he made out of an old pair of jeans, that he'd bought a long time ago and didn't actually fit him. So using clothes in that way is great, especially if you've got like denim or leather or something that's just not being used anymore. You can also pick up almost unused clothes and bags and things from charity shops and secondhand shops, and you can get the hardware off them and you can reuse that, or you can, cut out parts of the fabric and reuse that. Another thing is keeping all of your offcuts. So I've got a little drawer here where I keep all my offcuts, and you can end up with some kind of weird shaped things. This one's long and thin. Just keep hold of them all. What you can do is you can attach them together and just create patchwork, for a really cool patchwork bag. Or you could even create patchwork binding, because binding, it's not very wide. Double fold binding is just less than 2 inches normally. So, you can create some really funky binding. So even with things like webbing, if you've got offcuts, don't throw them out. Make sure that you keep them. You can use them for all sorts of things, like adding a little grab handle to a bag, or you could use them for making key rings. We're going to have a little video on that shortly, on how to create key rings. These are great little additional sellers that you can put in if you're like going to a market and things like that, to sell alongside your bags. Okay, and another idea that came to us recently. If you've got sewing friends or sewing acquaintances, or people on sewing Facebook groups who live in the same country as you, you can arrange fabric swaps. So recently I wanted some blended thread fabric. Now, blended thread fabric, this is one of my scraps that I've got left over, is expensive because it comes from Canada, and getting it shipped over to the UK is expensive. So I only buy this on very special occasions, but I really wanted this design, and another friend of ours on Facebook, she wanted a different blended threads design. So we were messaging each other with pictures of all the blended thread fabrics that we had, and we agreed to do a swap. So I had just enough from her to create this bag, and then she had just enough of my scraps to create another bag. So this is a great way, if you haven't got like a lot of fabric, you can combine 3 fabrics to make a bag, so that way you're using up scraps. So if you know anybody that makes like clothes and things, their offcuts are going to be like a good size normally. Normally they have like a lot left over, more than we do with bag making. And then you can use fabrics and combine them to create, it's not really patchwork, but a nice little colourful combination on a bag. Okay, so another great tip. Only buy what you need, but also look out for sales and make sure that you're subscribing to people's mailing lists, because most companies, ourselves included, will give special offers to mailing list subscribers. Or, you know, we send like regular one-off offers that they get early access to. So when products we haven't got a lot in stock, we'll send them to the mailing list first. So if you subscribe to mailing lists for companies that you like, then when they've got an offer on, you'll be the first to hear about it. Another big cost for bag makers can be interfacing. Now, if you're using a lot of quilting, cotton and things like that, you're using interfacing a lot. So try and look for fabrics, particularly for the exterior of a bag, that don't require interfacing, because you're instantly going to be saving, say, £5 a metre, because you're not paying for the interfacing. So this is one of our patterns. This is the Cedron backpack. This has got waxed canvas for the exterior, and on the inside it's got waterproof canvas. And because of that, it's got loads of stability without any stabilizers, without any interfacing. All it has is some Peltex in the gusset, just to hold the main shape. Now this waterproof canvas, we love using it because it is massive. It width-wise, it's 1.5 meters wide, which is about 60 inches wide. It's a lot wider than like your standard quilting cotton. And it's £7.50 a metre, including delivery. So that's very cheap, considering that normally I would maybe pay £10 a metre minimum for quilting cotton, and then I would need to add £5 a metre for interfacing. So it's about half the cost. Really durable as well. It's got loads of stability, so you even don't need to have as much stabiliser in there, so you don't need to add as much like Decaville light or foam or whatever. It's a great way to save money and cut down the costs on your bag. And then it's always worth having a look round with suppliers. So a lot of fabric suppliers will have, you know, like discount stores with like remnants and things like that. For example, the leather that Adam used for this bag is from the discount shed at A&A Crack & Sons. So they're a leather wholesaler in Britain, and they have sheds full of like old stock, and you go in and you can get it massively discounted. And a lot of fabric type stores will have that sort of thing. So it's just always worth like dropping them an email, asking what they do with their remnants, whether they have a way for you to purchase them. It's always worth checking out. Even for things like hardware, it's worth just checking. When we get our hardware in, we have to check all of the stock for any imperfections, and then we have to weed out anything that's got an imperfection. So you'll notice like in our clearance section on our website, we regularly do like seconds bundles, which are things with like small marks on and that kind of thing. If you're making it for you or for a friend, you're probably never ever going to notice those marks. So it's worth keeping an eye out for that sort of thing, like seconds bundles, because they're going to be a lot cheaper, but it's not actually going to make a difference to, you know, the structure of the final bag or really the look of the final bag. When it comes to buying interfacing and things like that, see if you can find like lesser brand things. So a lot of the like woven interfacing, if it's a brand name, like a big brand name, it'll be more expensive. Whereas if you can find some of the lesser brand names, so long as, you know, they've got good reviews and things, they can be just as good. And some of them can be thicker even. So that means that like where sometimes you would have had to use 2 layers of interfacing, you're definitely only going to need 1. Or maybe even you can use less stabilizer, so it will be saving you money in that way. Also look for like bulk buy deals if it's something that you regularly use. So for instance, we're going to start stocking things like Decaville light and woven interfacing bundles, where like you buy 5 meters or 2 meters at a time. That way, if it's something that you're going to use regularly, that you're guaranteed to use, you can end up saving money per meter. But again, just be aware that you're not buying stuff that you're not going to use. It's really hard to do, and we all love to have like all the pretty things and all the pretty hardware and the beautiful new fabrics. But try to remember whenever you're buying something what you're going to use it for. And then there's even some people who I've seen, particularly on the Wattle and Sake group, which is a fabric group, who are really, really organised, and they write down every project that they're planning when they do a fabric pre-order. It's amazing. So that when their fabrics and everything turn up, they know exactly what they're going to use it for. So that's like a great way to make sure that you've not got fabric that's just kind of going to sit on the shelf forever. And last but not least, buy cheap, buy twice. That's what my mum always used to say, and she's right. I recently bought a cheap pair of jeans that I loved from a supermarket, and within a week they had just ripped. So when we invest in things, especially like in our tools, it's actually quite often cheaper in the long run. So maybe you pay a lot for a decent pair of fabric scissors, but they'll last you, 10 to 15 years. So I recently had a friend visit who bought me these amazing scissors from Guggenheim. I think that's how you say it. Absolutely amazing, and I'm sure that they weren't particularly cheap, but they are going to last me forever. So it is worth considering when you're investing in tools. If you buy cheap, you could end up having to buy and replace them later, and particularly you will see that with certain things. Rainbow hardware has always been my pet hate for that reason, because whenever I buy cheap Rainbow hardware, it's got like all that bubbling on it, all the marks. I really don't like it, and then I end up not using it because of it. So if you buy the decent stuff, then you know that you're not going to have any rejects, you're not going to have any wasted materials. So buy cheap, buy twice. It kind of also applies to fabrics. If there's like a fabric brand that you love, for me, it's Blended Thread. It costs me a lot to buy their fabric from Canada. I think including postage, it cost me like £25 a meter or something like crazy like that. But I use it. It never sits on my shelf because I love the design, and as soon as it arrives, I can't wait to cut into it and make something from it. Whereas I've got some fabrics that I spent £10 a meter on, and they have sat on that shelf for a year or two. And maybe at some point I will get around to using them, but for me, it's more worthwhile financially to pay more and actually use it than to pay less and just have it sat on the shelf and never get used. So just maybe bear that in mind as well. Just because something's cheap, if it's not something that you love, then maybe you're not going to use it, and actually it's just costing you money to have something that you're not going to use. So I know you guys are all going to have like a ton of other money saving tips for bag making, so make sure that you leave them in the comments for us because we really want to hear them. I know things are supposedly going to be getting a lot tighter financially for all of us in the future, so it's worth just making sure that we share all the tips and like share all the ideas, because that way we can carry on making bags and like really, really loving this hobby. If you have recommendations on like fabric swap groups and things like that, also let us know, because I'm not a part of any, but I'm pretty sure that they exist out there. Anything like that, we would love to hear. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Bye.